So I'm going to be 100% honest with everyone out there. When Apple announced a budget iPhone X clone for $749, I was skeptical. But I've been using the blue iPhone XR for the better part of a week now. And there have been a couple times where I've asked myself, why did I spend so much on my iPhone XS Max? And these are some of the reasons why.
Where's the liquid?
Who's letting people in here? So the cool part about reviewing a phone like the XR is that internally it's similar to the iPhone XS. In fact, it's actually identical. So there are a few exterior differences, and we're going to cover those and talk about how they impact your day-to-day usage if you end up buying this particular phone. So hardware-wise, what are your differences? Well, first off, you have aluminum acting as your enclosure versus that stainless steel. The phone is marginally thicker, and on the back you have a single lens versus that dual lens setup. Now, this difference on the bottom, for those of you who are obsessive about your smartphone design and build, it'll drive you off the wall a little bit. So you have identical sized speakers and mics. One's not cut off by an antenna band like they are on the XS, but your lightning port sits slightly lower than your security screws and your mic and speakers. So if you look at it long enough, it'll drive you insane. Just like it's slowly driving me insane ever since someone here in the studio pointed it out to me. And on the front, your biggest difference, arguably, is that liquid Retina LCD display.
So does my phone have water in the screen too?
Why is he still here? And I know I mentioned that internally the iPhone XS and XR are essentially identical, and they are in terms of the processor, but the iPhone XR actually gives up 1 gig of RAM, so you have 3, but you have a bigger battery compared to the XS, so there's a little bit of give and take. So about that liquid Retina display. Yes, it is LCD, and in terms of resolution, it's somewhere between 720p and 1080p, which was one of the biggest reasons why I was skeptical when they announced this phone. But I'm here to tell you that this display is actually really, really good. Colors are sharp and accurate, and there's even videos on YouTube of blind comparison tests between the iPhone XR's display and other displays with higher resolutions, and people favored the iPhone XR's display over displays that are even better. So yeah, you get a really good quality display even though it's LCD, and the only thing you really have to deal with are marginally larger bezels around the rest of the display. So if you can put up with that, you also get cool Face ID. So yeah, the display is actually really, really nice.
Yeah, it's this thing called anti-aliasing that they do in the corners, since you can't traditionally have an
Just
LCD
cut it.
display.
Just cut it. Now that LCD display also comes with one more distinct advantage, and that's the battery life. So the iPhone XR actually has 2 cool things going for it. One is that LCD display, which helps with battery because the phone is naturally pushing less pixels. And number 2, the iPhone XR is bigger than the XS. Comes in at 6.1 inches, whereas the XS is 5.5. So Apple is able to fit a larger battery in there. Those 2 factors alone lead to much, much better battery life on the iPhone XR versus the XS. You can easily get at least 4 to 5 hours of screen on time, and the phone will definitely last you an entire day. So yeah, battery life is actually a welcome improvement compared to the iPhone XS. Now another thing that the iPhone XR borrows from its really, really expensive sibling, the iPhone XS, is the rear camera. Now I mentioned earlier that you don't get that dual lens setup, and you don't. You get a single lens, but you get the same exact wide-angle lens found in the iPhone XS. 12 megapixels, f1.8 aperture. It's got those really big pixels, so the phone is really good in low light situations, and it deals with dynamic range fantastically. Now, one of the biggest advantages of having that second telephoto lens is portrait mode, and Apple managed to find a way to use machine learning on the A12 Bionic to add portrait mode using a single lens, and it works really well. There's only one caveat though. It can only take photos of a human subject. You cannot take photos of your pets in portrait, random objects, things like that. The phone is only trained to recognize whenever there's a person being used as the subject. Nonetheless though, you get portrait mode, so if that's something valuable to you, hey, at least it's there. And the cameras themselves work really, really well. So I'm sure you guys have gathered that the iPhone XR brings a lot of good stuff to the table, mainly because it's so heavily based on the iPhone XS. You get a phone that comes in 6 different colors, arguably has a better build, depending on if you like your phones a little on the thick side. You get that same trailblazing performance thanks to the A12 Bionic and 3 gigs of RAM, which, let's be honest, iOS 12 does a good enough job using 3 gigs of RAM to the point where you're not going to feel a difference even if you had more RAM. You get a really good rear camera setup, and you still get portrait mode using machine learning. You get super fast Face ID, and you get one of the best LCD displays on the market with a starting price of $750. So yeah, the iPhone XR is not just a budget iPhone, it's actually a really, really good iPhone at a budget price. So that's it. The biggest question I feel like a lot of people are gonna ask is, who is the iPhone XR for? And I know in a lot of my other videos, especially the XS and XS Max review, I talked about if you have an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 8 Plus, you should probably hold off. If you have an iPhone 7 or older, you can upgrade. Honestly, I feel like anyone can upgrade to the iPhone XR and they're gonna be happy. Think about it this way. If you have an iPhone 8 or older, you're still using an LCD display. So you're just gonna jump to an LCD display with an iPhone 10 design, and you're gonna get all those other noticeable improvements that I talked about in this video. And it's $750, much, much cheaper than $1,000 for the smallest storage option of the iPhone XS. So the XR is Apple's mass marketing iPhone. The XS is for those of us that want to be on the bleeding edge of technology. We want the absolute best of what Apple has to offer, and we're willing to pay whatever costs for it. As always, guys, I really hope y'all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.
So you said it was it this panel? Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm talking to you from my Google Pixel 3 XL. So this panel is the top right.
I can't anymore.
I think it was.
I can't. Who let this guy in here?
So with the liquid retina, if I crack the screen, will we get like water damage inside?
That's a good question.
Coming in.
That's actually a good question. Who could we reach out to that for? Tim? Tim Cook maybe?
Timmy?
Timmy C. We'll reach out to Timmy C.
We should.
Let's send him an email.
Yeah.
Let's send him an email. Grab my Mac.
Yes.